What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Not so good for me, but we push through. So, yesterday I made a couple of videos talking about extensions for Devin Witherspoon and extensions for Jackson Smith and Jigba. So, if you didn't see those videos, go check them out. Posted them yesterday. But the question is there anybody else from that 2023 draft class that is worth thinking about extending? Obviously, I think that the two we talked about yesterday are the ones you kind of have to do. You are doing yourself a disservice if you do not extend them this offseason, JSN and Witherspoon, but everybody else, it's less clear. However, there's also less time, there's less flexibility here because everyone else that you have from that draft class does not have a fifth-year option. So everybody else from that draft class, if they're still on the team, has 1 year the upcoming year left on their deal. So let's take a look at a couple guys that you could at least think about. All right, guys, before we go any further into the video, I want to take a minute to tell you guys about my friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper is a one-stop shop for all your sports needs. Download the app to your phone. You can celebrate and chat about sports in real time with other users. You can get scores, news, and alerts with blazing fast speed. And you can play in daily fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports together. Download Sleeper today, and don't forget to use my promo code SBN for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Plus, they currently have a free $20 entry, no deposit required, just make an account. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states and growing. So check out Sleeper and have fun with sports this year. All right, so this is where things get a little bit tricky because you're going to need the player to really be willing to play ball to make this worth your time. For instance, Derick Hall. Derick Hall was a second round pick in 2023, so he is entering the final year of his deal. A cap hit of 2.9 million in 2026, which is not even 1% of the salary cap. So there's not really a lot you have to be alarmed about there. Like that is a very, very small amount. He's easily going to be worth that. The question is, do you want to try to extend him now? And if you do try to extend him now, what would an extension even look like? Because the whole point of an early extension is that the two sides can compromise. And if the two sides can compromise, then you can get to a place where the player gets long-term security and the team gets a little bit of a deal, or at the very least, easier outs from the player if things don't go exactly as planned. So Derick Hall is coming off a year where I think he played pretty decently. Like, I'm not knocking Derick Hall. I think he made big improvements as a run defender in 2025, and that was the big concern about him after 2024. He wasn't a good run defender. He was a pure pass rusher. In 2025, he looked a lot better at defending against the run. However, his pass rush production took a big hit, and maybe that's just the trade-off with Derick Hall, right? Maybe in order for him to be effective against the run, he just isn't going to produce the same as a pass rusher. However, he had an excellent Super Bowl with 2 sacks, including forcing a fumble that was really the beginning of the end of that game, I think. So you do see the ability in there, and I think there is reason to believe that Derick Hall is a player who can ascend to a much higher stratosphere in 2026. Maybe 2026 is the year he puts it all together. Maybe he becomes like a 7 or 8 sack player with good run defense. And if he does that, he's going to be a lot more expensive in 2026 or well, excuse me, 2027. So that's why the team might be incentivized to extend him now. But the player knows that too. The player knows that if he goes out there and has a good 2026, not even a great 2026, like I said, 7 to 8 sacks and decent run defense, he's going to get paid big time. So with that in mind, what would it take to make this work? Because the other element at play here is that you do kind of want the contract year Derick Hall, because contract year Derick Hall should be more motivated to play at his best possible ability. Therefore, in a year where you're going to need a decent amount out of Derick Hall and you're trying to win the Super Bowl, having that contract year, Derick Hall could end up being beneficial, right? Because in theory, he's going to go harder trying to put up those numbers so he can get the bigger contract. Like, you take a look at the edge contracts around the league sorted by average annual value. Obviously, you're nowhere close to where you'd be with a Derick Hall extension at the top, or even as you scroll down. However, if Derick Hall has a good year in 2026, could he get about George Karlaftis money? 4 years, 88 million, 22 million per year? I think so. Edge rushers get paid a lot. If Derick Hall shows that he's a complete player in 2026, I think the 2027 Derick Hall is going to get a lot of money. So that's why you would take care of an extension now. But again, you need the player to fear the risk, right? You need Derick Hall to be scared of the other side. And the other side is, if he plays poorly or gets hurt in a particularly devastating way, who knows what he'll ever get paid again. So there is some reason to want to cash in while you can. And, you're scrolling through this list here. You're going through a lot of players that don't really stand out all that much. You're trying to find decent comps for Derick Hall. What about somebody like Grossmatos on the 49ers? Yetur Grossmatos got a 2-year, $18 million deal. I think it was 2 years ago from the 49ers, coming off a 4-year deal, rookie deal with the Panthers, where he didn't really live up to expectations. He wasn't terrible, but he peaked in 2023 with 4.5 sacks. So maybe this is about where you could get to. Maybe you offer Derick Hall 2 years, 20 million, and you say, okay, we're going to give you a hedge against injury or bad play, but it's going to be way less than what you could get if you have a big 2026. It's kind of what we did with Abe Lucas. If Abe Lucas was a free agent in the upcoming offseason, we'd have to pay him way more than we paid him. He got like, what, 15 million a year? We'd probably have to give him at least 23, 24 million a year based on the season he just had. So paying Hall now does kind of prevent that. The thing is, the player also has to be willing to play ball. And I don't think Derick Hall would take the hedged deal. It's not like he's been super injury prone in his career. He probably has a decent deal of confidence that he can be a quality player in 2026. And I don't know. I just don't see Derick Hall agreeing to a 2-year, $20 million extension when he knows he could get like double that, more than double that with a good 2026. Like I said, George Karlaftis money is in range. He can get that 22 million per year. He could get, honestly, if he plays really well, he could get Rashawn Gary money or Montez Sweat money. Like, edge rushers get paid in this league, especially if you can play both ways. So if it's on the table, I would think about it. I still don't know if I would do it, though. I will admit that. I kind of like the idea of having Derick Hall on a contract year, and I want to see what he can do, because we are going to need some serious production from Derick Hall in 2026, I think, if we're going to be the team we want to be. Now, the other guy you could have this conversation about would be Zach Charbonnet, and it's really hard to have this conversation right now because he is coming off such a devastating injury. I think this would have been a really interesting convo if he didn't get hurt, but he did, so I don't know how much I can say here. Let's try. Contract year, due 2.2 million approximately against the cap in 2026. He's going to miss a lot of the year, maybe even most of the year. Who knows how rehab is going to go? But I think we can safely assume that Charbonnet is not really going to be a big part of the 2026 Seahawks. So therefore, is there any reason why you would consider extending him now? I don't think so, because you need to see what he can do, at least for a little bit, when he comes back. You need to get a feel that he is past the ACL injury and that he's going to be the player that he was before. And I don't think anything he does at the end of 2026 is going to drastically increase his asking price. I don't think Charbonnet is going to go out there and have a bunch of 100-yard games and then go, okay, I want top running back money. So I don't think there's any reason to mess around here. honestly, because the injury he had was so bad, it would not shock me if he next year is just his last year as a Seahawk. He's going to play a few games at the end of the year, and that's it, because we got to move on. And if we re-sign Walker, which I think that we will, I don't think you want to be extending both of your running backs. But what would an extension look like for Charbonnet? Again, you go to running backs, you sort by average annual value, and you got to get through a lot of players before you find anybody you're even willing to think about comparing Charbonnet to. Maybe somebody like Jordan Mason, right? Jordan Mason was a pretty decent running back in this league as a backup or part of a rotation with the 49ers. And then he got a 2-year deal worth $10.5 million with the Vikings last offseason. And that's probably a decent comparison. Again, it's kind of tough because of the ACL injury, but I guess that would probably be where Charbonnet comes in right now, like 2 years, 11 million. Like you look at Jordan Mason's stats, it's kind of similar to Charbonnet. Never had a 1,000-yard season, just like Charbonnet hasn't. But his yards per touch is a lot higher than Charbonnet typically is, I think. So it's, I guess, somewhere around there. But I just don't really see much of an upside. I don't really see much of a point because, again, what is Charbonnet going to do in a truncated 2026 coming off a major injury that is going to boost his asking price? And honestly, if you re-sign Walker, you might already be kind of forgetting about the possibility of re-signing Charbonnet because you already re-signed your running back. Something to think about, though, I guess. There's really nobody else in the 2023 draft class to talk about. I guess Anthony Bradford, but I'm not going to be able to sell extending Anthony Bradford to anybody. And honestly, it doesn't really make any sense to. He's fine where he is. And that is about it. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys soon. Go Hawks. Everybody have a good rest of your day.